What is up, guys? We are back and running once again. So much going on in the sports world. We have NCAA basketball kicking off. We have hockey getting close to the playoffs, the NBA, and the craziness of the free agency in football.
It's Elliott! It's picked off! It's picked off! It's Tracy Porter!
It's a lot to talk about in the football right now.
On the line, we have a special guest tonight. We have Chris Dale, a friend of ours. He's going to help us talk about the football and the basketball. Chris, what do you think about this craziness going on right now in the NFL and all the changes that are going on?
I think it's predictable for early on in the free agent period, right? I mean, I think we've seen about 2/3 of most free agents signed already, which is what you expect. I would say this, though. If you would have told me 2 weeks ago that Antonio Brown would wind up in Oakland, I would have told you were crazy. As a matter of fact, last year I thought your boy out there was crazy. But it looks like the Grue Dog might be putting together a team that can make some noise out west.
And they have a lot of draft picks, too. They're going to add a lot of pieces to that puzzle.
Well, and remember, when he traded away Khalil Mack, everybody was saying, oh, man, that's crazy. What is he doing? He's tearing the team apart. But if you guys are like me, you probably believe that in order to build, you must first destroy. Right?
Absolutely.
And that obviously wasn't the team that he wanted. So Grue Dog came in. I mean, he's the right type of personality for that job, right? He came in. He was able to stand up to the criticism. He kind of wrecked shop. He took a wrecking ball to the old roster. But now, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. If Derek Carr can perform up to, even just an average level, if he's a little bit better than a game manager, with the type of talent that they're assembling out there, if they can get a running back, because I think Marshawn Lynch I think it might be over for him, right? The tread's probably worn bare on those tires. But if they're able to get a running back and continue to build consistently, which, like you said, they have some draft picks now, I think they could be really interesting coming into the next year.
Well, Gruden.
I was surprised that we were able to get Deshaun Jackson back. I'm in Philly, right? So a lot of the rhetoric here is most of the fans didn't want him to go in the first place. But if you listen to a lot of the commentators on the radio right now, the media isn't too happy with Deshaun Jackson being back. I don't care because I don't have to interview the guy. All I have to do is look at his stats. And statistically, when he's healthy, right, which is an issue, but when he's healthy, he's one of the best deep threats, if not the best deep threat in the league. So we need it.
Well, I think he led the league last year in yards per catch. But back to Oakland, I think Carr, a couple years ago, they went to the Super Bowl, and they had a great line. That line has been trashed the last couple of years. I think that's one of the biggest things. If they build that up, I think Carr is still a good quarterback. The whole chemistry with Gruden. Gruden he's a football genius, and that's why they paid him $100 million. He knows what he's doing. It might not be what people want him to do, but you give them 2 or 3 years, and they're going to be right back to either winning championships or close to it again.
Yeah, definitely. I just feel like a guy listen, he knows how to coach, right? And so the issue with, and I'm sure you guys know because you've coached before, the issue is getting your team to buy into whatever it is that you're doing. But then after you get your team to buy in, you still need the talent to get it done. And so that's what the draft picks that he acquired with the trade last year are going to allow him to do, and he'll be able to build young. So it's interesting, because he's in a division where he should be able to make some noise. So we'll see.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Chris. Do you think that the way that the free agent market is going, do you think this is good or is this bad for the NFL? I mean, it's becoming more of a business. It's not like the 80s and 90s where guys were loyal to a team. Now it's a matter of getting that money before retirement. Do you think this is good or bad for the sport?
I think a lot of what we're seeing now is the guaranteed money is what players are really interested in. For years, teams have been able to backload contracts, and players would never be able to reach the numbers for incentivized contracts that would allow them to make the type of money that they want to make. And when you see things like CTE and stuff like that happening, it really, I I've never played, but I would definitely be trying to get as much money as I could as soon as I could. Now, that being said, you understand that there's an inherent risk when you decide to play professional football. Shoot, if you decide to play college or high school football, there's an inherent risk. So it's an odd dichotomy, right? Because we look at the sport and we say, well, these players are asking for incredible amounts of money, but they're actually out on the field risking their body. Whereas though we see owners who are making tons of money and don't take quite the same risks. I don't like what it does for the team sport, for the team aspect of the sport, where, you know, we grew up watching teams that stayed together for years and they built that continuity. And, you know, for what it's worth, the Patriots have been able to assemble a dynasty in the modern era of football where players are moving in and out of teams like people through a turnstile. So, you know, if you've got the right type of culture, if you've got the right type of coach, it may not matter as much the contracts that these players are getting, because you're able to plug and play, which is something that Bill Belichick has been able to do in New England for quite some time now. But it is a concern because, you know, where do we say too much is too much, right? These contracts, they keep getting more expensive. It's so much more expensive to add players to your team now. And the detriment that serves to the team is, so now when I've paid you, right, and I'm looking at this cap number and we're approaching the cap, I may not be able to surround the players with talent, the talent that we would need to be able to win, because I'm getting players that want so much money. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So, Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell, we all know, he's got he wanted to be the highest paid running back in football. So he went to the Jets. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about the Jets, but I don't think they're going to be the best team in football this year. Maybe they make the playoffs, but I don't even think that seriously they're going to contend for a Super Bowl when you've got teams like New England still in that division.
Yeah.
And
but Miami's a mess.
Right. Well, but then you still have, in the conference, you still have Kansas City that they'll have to contend with, right? And if you believe that Baltimore got better this offseason, then they have Baltimore that they have to contend with as well.
Which I don't agree with that, but yeah, I know where you're going.
And Chris, I'll definitely agree with you that you definitely see a lot more players nowadays wanting that more guaranteed money. Especially, you saw that with Earl Thomas last year. He really pushed that because, you know, like you said, a lot of players get injured in this sport, and they want that guaranteed money, like baseball. That if they get injured, a team can't just cut them, and then they lose all that money.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Chris. Let me ask you this. Okay. You both just made a good point about the risk in the sport. Now, football, you know, you and I grew up at a time when, you know, football was hardcore. And, you know, the rules, there were hardly any rules. You didn't call for a fair catch, you got ran over. Do you think that this is the kind of sport where going into it, these guys know what they're getting into, that they should have to sign some sort of a waiver where they can't come back and they can sue the NFL? I think that's the problem with the NFL. All these older players, they're coming back with lawsuits about concussions, the whole 9 yards. And I think it's watering the sport down as far as, you know, especially when it comes to hitting a quarterback and stuff like that. Do you think the NFL should make them sign a waiver so they could lift some of these rules? Because I just think it's getting to the point where it's like flag football.
I feel like we're one step away from flag football. Flag football in some instances may be more exciting. But here's the issue with trying to force them to sign something like that. I don't know if, one, the collective bargaining agreement would allow you to do that right now. And even if they did, the NFL Players Association, I just don't, you know, you've got guys in there, and that's the avant-garde. Like, those are the older guys that are in control of the Players Association. So I just don't think that they would let something like that happen. They are turning the sport into two-hand touch, essentially. And remember, that's what we used to be drawn to when we watched football, right? We used to be drawn to the hits. But when you've seen the way that the game has evolved over the years and the rules that have been put into place to protect offensive players, that's not the draw to the game anymore anyway. What's the draw now? The draw is high-scoring offenses, right?
Yeah.
We're watching guys sling the ball all over the field and get stats that before were unheard of. you had Patrick Mahomes come out of the box this year, slinging the ball all over the place. Now, I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have been able to do that during the era of football that we watched. I'm just saying it would be a lot less likely. You know, you can barely touch the quarterback now.
Yeah, you know what?
You had quarterbacks getting obliterated.
Yeah,
when we grew up.
to be a defensive player, though, it's to the point now where you almost start to feel bad for these defensive players. You know, if they get blocked or they get pushed into a quarterback, or even if they sack a quarterback wrong now, it's a penalty. I just think that the way the NFL is going, I just think the sport is going to get boring. Now, what if they made him sign a waiver and there was no salary cap? Like, what if it was like baseball, where these owners could pay them whatever they wanted? Now, let me look at Dallas, for example. Jerry Jones easily makes over $300 million a year just in revenue, if not more. What if there was no salary cap? You know, and these guys signed a waiver, and they were allowed to pay them whatever they wanted. So then they said, okay, you know what? It's going to be hardcore, but I'm going to make $20 million, $25 million a year.
I think.
Do you think that would change things a little bit?
I think
it might.
Because I think if they go any further, I mean, look at the what is it, AAL? AAF? They don't even kick off because they say that's the most dangerous part of a game is the kickoff.
And see, like, that's one thing that I like about the AAF. I like how the NFL can kind of watch that and see how their rules play out, because they hit hard in that league. But like you said, there's no kickoffs, so that eliminates a lot of injuries. But they allow defenders to really, you know, hammer the quarterbacks, which, you know, I kind of like personally, because like you guys said, growing up, watching that is one of the better parts of the game. But, you know, I've watched a couple weeks now. I haven't seen any major injuries yet or anything like that, and they drill the quarterbacks.
I just think if they had no salary cap in football, I think more of these teams would keep their I think the teams would stay complete. You wouldn't have guys going around searching for money from teams that have a lot of cap space. You know what I mean? I think you wouldn't see guys getting franchise tagged unless it was for a ridiculous amount of money.
Right. Well, you would also see teams like, I mean, would New England ever lose if there was no salary cap? Would New England really ever lose a game?
Yeah, because they're cheap. You know what I mean? They're cheap. If you, like you said before.
Yeah, but they're cheap. They're cheap in part because there's a salary cap. If there was no salary cap, they wouldn't be restricted. They wouldn't be worried about that.
Yeah, but if there was no salary cap, those guys that they're picking up, they wouldn't be leaving their teams.
We already know Robert Kraft doesn't have an issue with spending money. Now, where he spends his money, that's
yeah, we know where he spends his money in Florida.
I think if you get rid of a salary cap, I mean, you're already seeing big contracts get bigger and bigger every single year. I mean, you can even look at MLB baseball for that. I think you get rid of salary cap in sports, it's just going to be ridiculous at that point.
But you know what's really going to hurt? You know what's really going to hurt is look at the signings this offseason. I mean, they're paying safeties now, not even corners. They're paying safeties almost $15 million a year. Now you're going to have lockdown corners who are only making about 7 or 8, saying, you know what, I'm going to hold out now because I'm a shutdown corner, and I'm not making what a safety makes. And all the safety does is play center field and just runs around wherever the ball's thrown to. You know what I mean?
Or you'll have guys do what Le'Veon Bell did. Le'Veon Bell sat out an entire season, right? And what happens for him? He gets a 4-year deal worth $52.5 million for a running back. For a running back, guy.
And you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy about that is the deal that Le'Veon got was maybe $7 million different than what the Steelers offered him in July. So, like, at the end of the day, was all that said not even worth it?
Let me ask you this, Chris. If you played, would you be like a Le'Veon Bell where you would be like, you know what, I'm not signing, I'm going to sit up, I'm not going to pay nothing? Or would you be like a Kirk Cousins who signed, 3 tags? And every time you sign a tag, it goes up the next year. So he made, close to $60 million in franchise tags. And then he went to Minnesota and got, an $80 million guaranteed money contract? So
yeah, listen, I can tell you, and this is me never having played a professional sport and ever received a dime of professional money. I want to win. So, you know, my goal would be, let's win. And then if I ever want to leave, having a ring on my finger could command more money. So, dude, I would never even know what to do with $40 million or $35 million anyway. Like, honestly, bro, I wouldn't know what to do with it. So, but I guess when, football is an alpha male sport, right? So, I mean, you got a lot of guys in there who want what they want. I'm a little bit more humble than that. I want to win. So I'm the type of guy that may take a reduced contract. I'm the type of guy that would sit through a franchise tag because I want to win. That's probably more important to me than getting paid the type of money they're getting paid. I'd be happy just to make what some of these guys are making anyway. Like I said, I've never touched that type of money though. Like, let me ask you. Let me reverse and ask you that question. Would you take the Kirk Cousins route, or would you be prone to do something like Le'Veon Bell? Because I don't think, if I'm being honest with you, I don't think it was completely about the money for Le'Veon. Running backs have a very short shelf life in the NFL, as we've seen, right? The typical running back lasts maybe 3 years and he's out of the league. This is the typical back. So when you have a career where you're looking at some longevity, you kind of want to extend that as long as possible. And even if that means sitting out a year to wait for a better deal, even though it was only a $7 million better deal, it was still a better deal. And he's a year fresher. His body got to heal all last year.
Well, Dallas has concerns now with Zeke because Zeke has 2 years left on his rookie deal, and he's a workhorse. He averages over 300 touches a year, and there's rumors saying that he's going to sit out because he wants a new deal. But if I was a quarterback and I was a starting quarterback and my franchise tag was like $20 million, I'd sign it. I'd sign it because I'm guaranteed that $20 million. And then if they franchise tag me next year, it's going to be even higher.
And I think I would agree with Chris here. Like I said, I've never played professional sports, but I'm competitive. I would want to be like an MJ, almost build a team around you. So if I had to reconstruct my contract to get better players in with me, I'd stay loyal. I wouldn't want to have to go through the whole move-in, getting traded, go to a new place. I don't know if I'd be able to sit out a year. Like if someone offered me, $10 million a year to play right off the bat, I think I'd be humble, like Chris said, and take that.
But my thing too is, Chris, when you sit out, if you're not, let's face it, Le'Veon Bell's a superstar, but he's never going to be a guy that gets 20 touches a game. He's more of a screen passing guy. You have to be concerned. I mean, with all these kids coming out of college, going in the draft, sitting out, it's really risky. Because what if that phone don't ring? What if you don't get that call? And you sat out because the $14 million guaranteed in that franchise tag wasn't good enough for you.
Well, do you really think that Le'Veon is just a screen back? I mean, do you really believe that?
I don't think he's a workhorse. I don't think you're ever going to see him get like 300 carries a year. I don't think he's like that. And especially in today's NFL, it's not a one-back kind of a guy, like a system like we saw growing up, like a Tony Dorsett or guys like that. It's more now if they have different backs for different situations. But seriously, I don't see him getting 300-plus carries a year.
I think I definitely would say Le'Veon Bell can run the heck out of the ball. I don't think he's a power back, but I think I wouldn't call him a receiving back. I would say he's a great running back that can do multiple things with his body, and it's awesome. That's why I would say he's a superstar.
And even at Pittsburgh, I mean, he wasn't the every down back. I mean, you never saw him get more than 20 carries a game. You hardly even saw him get 20 carries a game.
Well, but with all due respect, I mean, Pittsburgh had Antonio Brown, so there's no way you can give him 20 carries a game and still throw the ball to Antonio Brown. That's not going to work.
Yeah,
that wasn't going to work, right? Like he wasn't happy with the share of balls that he was getting thrown his way anyway. But I will tell you this. I thought Le'Veon Bell was a decent 3-down back, right? And so this is what we're saying when we pay a guy like Le'Veon Bell. We're saying, all right, well, that allows me to have a back that can function on all 3 downs. So like a lot of offenses now you're seeing go with that 2-back set where you have one guy that's a pounder and another guy that's your change of pace back. You didn't really need that with Le'Veon. He was on there for first down. He was on for second down. He could pass block if you needed him to pass block, but more than likely you were going to have him chip someone like an edge rusher and then slip out into the flat anyway. And he had hands as good as a receiver. So, is the guy multi-tooled? Yes, he definitely is. Sitting out 1 year, losing $14 million, if you feel like it was worth it if you're Le'Veon Bell, I mean, you got a contract worth close to $52 million and like 42 in guaranteed or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's gonna make $20 million in his first 9 months or something like that. That said.
Yeah, something ridiculous like that. So, I mean, if that's what you want, that's what you want. But then you have another guy at the opposite end of the spectrum. You have Clinton Dix, right, who's making, what is it, $3.5 million?
Yeah, and he just signed today with somebody.
He signed with the Bears.
Yeah, he's going to the Bears.
Yeah.
He's going to the Bears. But he accepted less money from the Bears than he was being offered in other places. So you do have some guys that still maintain that integrity, who it's not all about money. Clinton Dix wants to win, and I think he sees something in Chicago where there might be a window of opportunity in that division.
Well,
right?
that's even surprising that he took that money because of, I mean, Mateo got signed for 14. All these safeties that just got picked up, I mean, they're averaging more than $10 million a year. So, and Clinton Dix is a great player. I wish he would have came to Dallas because we need one.
And that's awesome to see, because Chicago was so good last year. They should have went even further if they don't miss that kick. And like Chris said, it's cool to see players that also still go to teams who want to win. And like you said earlier, Chris, Le'Veon Bell is a superstar. Going to the Jets, I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders yet at all, because you got Sam Darnold in the second year and was nothing like some of the rookies that played this year. They don't really have a good receiver core, and their defense, it's always been good, but they don't have some superstars there besides Le'Veon Bell.
Right. And how many fans is Le'Veon Bell going to put in the seats, right? Like, great running back, but if you're not winning, no one really cares. And you're in a very tough market. You're in New York.
Yeah. And the media in New York, they'll destroy you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how well you're doing personally if the team's not winning. They didn't bring you there just for you to look good and put up numbers. They brought you there because at the price that they paid you, they brought you there to get them wins. And I'm just not so sure. I mean, we know that one man can't do that in the NFL. It's not like basketball, right, where one guy can turn a complete franchise around. You need all 11 guys on one side of the ball. So I just paying that type of money, and then once again, how does that hurt you against the cap to bring in other talent?
Yeah, I mean they went 4 and
a guy that much money.
They went 4-12 last year. I mean they have Jamison Crowder as a receiver. They have what's his name? Quincy Enunwa. He's good.
Yeah, Quincy Enunwa.
I mean they have a couple decent players there. I mean they have a young quarterback. Maybe they get 5 or 6 wins. I don't see them being lights out and winning that division. That's a tough division with New England. As long as New England's Brady's in there.
But speaking of New York, you're going to definitely talk about probably the biggest headline of this offseason is, the Giants trading Odell Beckham to the Browns after they give him a max extension. Chris, what are your thoughts, of the Browns getting an elite receiver that goes with Jarvis Landry and a young, good quarterback in Baker Mayfield?
Well, not only that, but they had a decent defense last year. And I think, what we saw with the Eagles in their Super Bowl year, and I'm going to step out on a limb here and say even what we saw with the Saints last year is when you have an offense that can move the ball and stay on the field, it helps your defense look a little bit better than what they actually might be, right? And so adding this type of production at the wide receiver spot is excellent for them. Now, that being said, they're going to have to protect Baker Mayfield, right? Because if he doesn't have time to throw the ball, I don't care how good Odell Beckham is, and I don't care how many balls Jarvis Landry can catch. If you can't protect him, none of that's going to matter. So, but it does make it interesting out there because they weren't a bad team last year. I mean, they were a middle of the pack team, and they got considerably better once Baker Mayfield got under the helm. So, what I worry about is this: when you add a personality like Odell Beckham to that team, who's now a pro and used to getting a certain number of passes a game and used to being the number one, does he have an issue playing in Cleveland where, he's really going to split touches? I don't see Baker Mayfield as the type of quarterback that just keys in on one receiver. I think he's going to spread the ball. He's going to throw the ball to the guy that's open and gives them the best opportunity to move the stick. So does he tear your locker room apart?
Well, think about it, too. They have Nick Chubb. They have Kareem Hunt. Well, we don't know what's going to happen with Kareem Hunt yet. But they have Duke Johnson. They have Antonio Galway, who was a rookie receiver last year, who's amazing. And there's a lot of guys that want the ball in there. And plus, they have a new coach, so he's going to be under a lot of pressure. Because if they don't win, I mean, you think about it. If their kicker doesn't blow those couple games for them early in the season, they're easily a 9 or 10 team win.
Why I don't think they're going to have a problem there, though, you got to think Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham played in college together.
And the college coach is there.
And their college wide receiver is now the wide receivers coach. So I don't really see him. It wasn't even like in New York, it was more like they just couldn't. I think it was more of a winning thing for him. I think he was so competitive that he wanted to win, and they weren't winning there. I think he's got close friends with him. He's got his college wide receiver coach. I don't really see there being a huge problem there. If there is a huge problem, then I don't know. I don't know.
All I gotta say is I think John Dorsey has to be the GM of the year if they ever had an award for it. He brought the dog pound back from the grave. I mean, I can't remember
Absolutely.
the last time they were good. I mean, back when Vinny Testaverde was there and they were playing Denver in those snowball games and all that. I can't remember when they were good last.
I was excited for the free agency last year. This year, like you said, I think that they're definitely at least division leaders this year. I think they're going to beat Pittsburgh. They have the talent. It's a matter of they produce it.
Well, and the thing is, they've made other moves that are kind of flying under the radar because of the Odell Beckham move. Like they did sign Eric Kush, offensive lineman. He can play all three spots on the offensive line. He started 11 games for the Bears over the last 2 seasons. So they're making other moves too that should really position them nicely in that division. What are they in the same division as the Colts? No, is that
no? They're in a division with Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. They're going to win that division.
Yeah, they should. They should.
Pittsburgh's a mess.
That gives them any...
Pittsburgh's a mess. I don't think they've done anything to. I mean, they still have Juju. They still have Connor.
Well, they lost their tight end though, Jesse James, and you got to think if Big Ben goes down, I mean,
yeah, they have no backup there. If Ben goes down, they're done. But Baltimore, man, I don't know what to think about Baltimore. I really don't. I don't know what to think about Lamar Jackson yet. I think he's more of a run first before I pass kind of quarterback, and I think he's going to end up getting himself hurt.
The thing with Baltimore though is, I mean, you get your starting running back now, Mark Ingram. I don't understand why they got rid of Mosley and Weddle, and then you spend $53 million on Earl Thomas. I don't understand why getting rid of 3 key. Your defense was really good last year, and you get rid of 3 key guys just to sign one guy for $53 million.
Maybe they know something we don't know.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. If you look at New England, for years, New England's been very good at getting rid of players at the exact right time, right? And so maybe in Baltimore they know something we don't know. I can tell you this: Earl Thomas was a good signing, but I don't know if he's a good signing at $53 million.
I'll agree with you on that.
That's a lot of money for us. I mean, he's a great signing, but considering this, he wanted to leave Seattle anyway. Like he wanted, I guess you pay him that much money because you don't want somebody else to jump up and snatch him from you. But man, this is what we're talking about, right? With these salaries. Now, do you have the money left to really to build anywhere else on the team besides where you just spent your money?
And then they got rid of their receivers. They got rid of Brown. They got rid of Crabtree. All they have is Willie Snead. I mean, he's a good receiver in the slot, but they still need that elite number 1 receiver to go with the running back system and Lamar.
I don't understand the Crabtree move. I don't understand why it seems like teams don't like Michael Crabtree. I like the guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Is he a cancer in the locker room? I mean, he's been on some really good teams, and then they just get rid of him.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. I think Crabtree's a pretty good receiver. I'll agree with you on that. I don't understand why you're loading your defense up and then you kind of like knock out some key wide receivers there.
Was it a cap hit? I mean, was he going to cost too much against the cap this year? Otherwise, I don't understand why you would get rid of him. I thought Crabtree was decent. I thought he performed well last year too. I don't understand that one.
And I could see like an Oakland situation, all right? You sign 2 great free agent wide receivers and you get rid of Jordy Nelson, but for Baltimore, there's no depth there. So why get rid of Crabtree?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you see someone like a Green Bay pick up Crabtree, or I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Jordy Nelson go back to Green Bay on a smaller contract deal.
Well, Randall Cobb's still a free agent. Jordy Nelson.
Because Aaron Rodgers loves Jordy Nelson.
Well, I like Jordy Nelson too. I don't know if there's room for him now. I mean, they've got a couple of young wide receivers out there who were emerging towards the end of the season. They're going to have a new head coach too, right? So
yeah.
We'll see what happens, because that's really what it would come down to. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is great, but I think the new head coach might have the final say in what happens there. And then, guys, we're still forgetting about this. There is a draft coming up too. And as much as I love Jordy Nelson, if you have the opportunity to get younger wide receiver and add some talent at the same time, you'd probably rather spend your money there.
Yeah, definitely. One free agent that I'm keeping my eyes on is tight end Jared Cook. Had an outstanding year last year. He's visiting with my Saints, and I'm hoping he can sign with us, because Drew Brees, last time he had a good tight end, Jimmy Graham, they were key together. It was amazing to watch. So if you can get Drew Brees, an elite tight end, to go with Michael Thomas, that's lights out right there.
But I'm surprised the Raiders didn't bring him back. I mean, he was the leading receiver for the Raiders, and he did a great job for the Raiders. And they just were like, no, whatever, let him go.
Like Chris said, maybe they know something we don't know.
When you see stuff like that, that's the only thing you can say, right? Like, you kind of scratch your head and say, well, maybe they know something we don't know, because you don't understand it. Except for, well, we do know this. We do know the Brewdog is eccentric, and he wants what he wants. And if he didn't feel like that was what he wanted, then you're out of there. I mean, this is a guy who traded Khalil Mack. So nothing's out of the game when we're talking to the Brewdog, or when we're talking about Gruden.
Yeah, I think with Gruden, you just got to let it happen at this point. I mean, he's done so much to destroy that team. I think you just got to see how he rebuilds it. I mean, they have four first-round picks in the first round, which is huge there. You got Derek Carr, who I still believe is a good quarterback. You got AB. I'll agree with you, Chris. They definitely need a running back, and there's some good running backs in this draft. So I'm excited to see what they do with the draft, even if they trade some of those picks away for some key players also.
All right, Chris, it's that time. I hate doing this, but we got to talk about your Philadelphia Eagles. Me personally, I think what the Eagles are doing, and I hate to even say anything positive about them, I think they're doing a great job. I think that division is going to come down to Dallas and Philadelphia, and I think when they play each other, it's going to mean a lot towards winning the East. What do you think?
Well, I think that's what I've been tossing back and forth in my head this entire time. Last year we struggled quite a bit, and I think a lot of that had to do with maybe Carson Wentz pressing a little bit. But I'll say this: last time he had a full year to a full off season to work out with wide receivers, we went to the Super Bowl. Now he didn't play, but the team went to the Super Bowl, and so we signed Malik Jackson, which obviously bolsters our interior defensive line. You won't be able to double-team Fletcher Cox now, or at least you shouldn't be able to double-team Fletcher Cox now. You've got Barnett coming back, who had a great rookie season, got injured last year, and I think people kind of forgot about him, like he kind of fell off the radar. But when you add him, and if he can be decent against the run, right, we need him to be decent, that adds some depth at line. Now, obviously, signing Brandon Graham,
who is probably one of the few Eagles that I like, because he came from the University of Michigan, by the way.
And re-signing him might have been one of the bigger moves that we made this offseason, right? I mean, he wanted to stay anyway, and here, we're talking about salaries. He accepted less money than he may have been able to get somewhere else to stay here, which is big time. He shows loyalty to a team that showed loyalty to him, because remember, coming out in the draft, there are a lot of guys that passed on Brandon Graham.
Well, you got to remember too, he is 30 years old. He has 10 years of experience already. I mean, he is still getting a 40-year extension. $40 million extension. I mean, that's a big chunk of money. I don't know if there's any team option or anything. You know how it is. There's all these different options that can happen. But what do you think about the secondary? Because I think that last year the secondary is what killed you guys.
I think it was, but we had a revolving door at the secondary. And then I think what you saw at the end of the year is we saw some guys begin to emerge that played relatively decent. I like Trayvon LeBlanc. I think that he'll be all right. What worries me about the secondary is we used a first-round pick to take a guy who had a blown Achilles. And even when he played last year, in my opinion, he didn't show me anything special. And it seems like, just from last year, it seems like he may be injury-prone. He may be. Now, he was a man cover corner. So I don't even know if the type of defense that we play is really his strong suit. But if he can't stay on the field, I don't know what difference it makes anyway.
Well,
Right?
you guys still have Rodney McLeod, Malcolm Jenkins. You know, I like Sidney Jones. I mean, I think Sidney Jones was great in college. I think he still has a lot of improvement to do. But if you can get these guys,
Rodney McLeod. Here's the thing with Rodney McLeod. You're not sure how healthy he's going to be this year either. I mean, there's no guarantee that Rodney McLeod's going to play.
yeah.
So,
But you guys got Trey Sullivan too, who's in his. This is going to be his third year. I mean, you guys have you do have the talent there. It's just a matter of it coming to the field, really.
I think one of the biggest thing for the Eagles this year was you got Deshaun Jackson back. I mean, you got him, Alshon Jeffrey, and Zach Ertz. You know, if Carson Wentz, comes back better than last year. I mean, he came off, Achilles, not Achilles, ACL. But, you got some speed out there at the wide receiver core. And you got Zach Ertz just to dump it off to. And maybe Ajayi coming back. I'm not sure if the Eagles even want him back.
No.
Yeah, you guys got Smallwood, Scott, Clement, and Adams that are going to be competing for playing time.
No. All right, so Jay Ajayi's got to go. I love the guy, but you got an ACL in one knee. You're bone on bone in the other knee. It wouldn't make any sense to bring you back. Sproles, I love Darren Sproles. I do, with all of my heart. You're old, dude, and this is a young man's game, especially at running back, right? In a specialized role, it's okay, but, how much are you going to cost us? I think Clement, I would love to see more of Clement if he could stay healthy this year. But I think the other way to go is the draft. We obviously missed out on Coleman, right? Once we didn't get Le'Veon Bell, they were targeting Coleman. You missed out on Coleman. So now I think we're going to have to look to the draft in order to get it back. What I will say to you, though, is I think what you just mentioned, getting Deshaun Jackson was huge because along with Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey on the flanks, what we're missing, what no one said is we re-signed Nelson Aguilar. Now, the contract may have been a little bit steep. I'm sure someone else would have given him just as much money, though. But the last time we had a guy that was able to stretch the field, right? And Torrey Smith, who Torrey Smith wasn't fantastic, but he did stretch the field. And when you had a player like that on the outside and you had Alshon Jeffrey on the other side, Nelson Aguilar had a great season. That was probably his best season as an Eagle. Now, I'm talking about our Super Bowl season, of course. So we've got something similar to that brewing this year. If Carson Wentz can return to regular game shape and look like the Carson Wentz that he was in the year that we went to the Super Bowl, talking about 2017, I think we've got a chance to win the division. Dallas still scares me. And I'll tell you what really scares me about Dallas. They re-signed Jason Witten, so I'm petrified now.
Well, we'll touch that. We'll touch that in a little bit, and I know I could hear the how scared you are. But I think your guys' biggest concern is if Wentz does go down. I don't think Nate Sudfeld is the guy that can take you to the promised land.
There's still a lot of free agent quarterbacks you can pick
and
up, though.
As far as running backs go, I don't know if you guys would want to waste the draft pick. I mean, if you look at the guys that are on your roster, you have Josh Adams from Notre Dame, who only has 2 years experience. You have Corey Clement from Wisconsin, only has 3. Boston Scott only has 1 year. And Wendell Smallwood is your guy there that's longest tenured. He has 4 years experience. So you have young players there yet.
The thing is, though,
it's just a matter of staying healthy and getting them on the field.
The thing is, though, besides Clement, like a lot of these guys had their chance to shine last year. And I'm not talking down to these guys, but Adams he played well, but he's not like he wasn't elite. I wouldn't say Smallwood is the solution there at all. Darren Sproles, I love Darren Sproles, the Saints, but like you said, he's getting old. Clement, if he stays healthy, could be, really potential there. But I think you go to the draft. There are some really good people coming out of the draft this year as a running back. Get a young, good guy in there. Boston Scott, I mean, the Saints drafted him. He's good on special teams, but I don't know if he's your answer either.
No, and from what I hear, they may be targeting Jordan Howard. Like, the Eagles do the running back by committee thing anyway, so it's not going to be one guy that totes the rock, like you said, about 20 times a game. That's not what they do here. So it's probably going to be a running back by committee thing anyway. If we get Jordan Howard, am I excited about it? If he can stay healthy, I am. I mean, if he can stay healthy and he doesn't kill us, because I think if you get a running back like that, then Corey Clement becomes far more attractive. Then Smallwood becomes far more attractive, right? Because they don't have to be your every down back, and it gives us some depth at running back. I'll tell you what, I did like Josh Adams, but if we're being altogether honest, he was pedestrian last year. I think part of the problem in that is though, he seems like to me the type of back that gets stronger during the course of a game with more carries. He's just not going to get that with the Eagles. So it's does the talent fit the type of system that the Eagles run here? And I think that's what we're looking at with a player like Josh Adams. I love him. I love the talent, but I just don't think this is the right type of system for him to flourish in.
All right, you guys were 9-7 last year. What do you think you're going to do this year?
I'd say 11-6. I think with the moves that we made, it should be good for at least 2 more wins. Carson Wentz coming back, and the division being weak. Listen, I don't think the Redskins are going to be that good, and I think the Giants should be terrible. So hopefully we sweep both of those teams, get a split with Dallas, and not having to play a first-place schedule should help us out, and maybe we'll be able to squeak out 11-6 and hopefully earn ourselves a first-round bye.
Well, I tell you what, I don't think the Giants are going to be terrible. I mean, offensively, they lost Odell, but they have been building up that line in the offseason here, and they still have weapons on offense. And Sterling Shepard, as long as he's healthy, he's good. Golden Tate's going to be good there. I mean, Saquon.
You need a defense, too, and they lost Landon Collins, and you still got a statue back there at quarterback. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be dumped down to Saquon all day because, I mean, listen, it's not like Odell Beckham was a bad receiver last year. It's not like Sterling Shepard was a bad receiver last year.
Yeah, but we've talked about this. We've talked about this several times now on the podcast about the Giants, and I hate talking about the Giants, but we do. When Eli has time, I mean, his stats, if you look at his stats from last year, his stats were not horrible. Actually, it was probably one of his best years, and I'm sure that's inflated by dumping it down to Saquon 96 times over the season. But when he has time in the pocket, he can throw. But if there's any kind of a stat for how least amount of time a quarterback has to throw, he leads it because that guy was running for his life a lot.
I think the Giants will be mediocre this year. I really don't know what to expect from the Redskins. I don't think the Redskins.
They don't have no receivers. The quarterback's horrible.
But like you guys said, I think it's going to come down to Dallas and the Eagles. I think Dallas and the Eagles will split, but I hate to say this, but I think the Eagles' weapons are just a little bit better than Dallas this year because I don't know what Zeke's going to do. I don't know if he's going to sit out. I don't know what Dak's going to do. And with Deshaun Jackson back, and if Carson Wentz can come back to his normal self, like his Super Bowl year, I think that's going to be trouble for Dallas. But Dallas has that young defense, so you can't. That's why I said they're going to split, and it's going to be interesting.
I am not worried as far as Dallas. You know what concerns me about Dallas? Their defensive line, because you lost Randy Gregory now again. You lost David Irving. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's not signing the franchise tag, and he refuses to get his shoulder surgery until he signs that. So if he doesn't sign it until July and doesn't get the surgery until July, he's out the whole year. So we're depleted on the defensive line. But as far as our offense goes, I think our offense is good. We're going to have a solid line next year. Everyone that's a starter is coming back is going to be there. Frederick's coming back. We have good weapons. Zeke will play. I just defensively, I have concerns. Corners, we're going to shut Deshaun down. We have great cornerbacks. It's just a matter of getting pressure on the quarterbacks. But we'll see. We have to play the Eagles twice. So if we split with them, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, you guys beat us 2 games last year. That killed us because we definitely should have won at least one of those games. But if we can get a split in the division with you guys, and like I said, sweep the other 2, I think we can get to 11-6. I honestly do. Now, I haven't seen a copy of the schedule, so I don't know what it's going to look like moving forward this year. Do you know which AFC division we're playing this year?
Yeah, we're playing the Patriots in them.
Okay, all right, excellent, because we kind of own the Patriots right now, so I'm good with that one.
All I'm saying though, Dallas has to come to the Dome, and I don't think the Eagles want to play the Saints again. After what happened last year.
I do think we want to play the Saints again. Actually, If Malcolm Jenkins has his way, we would play the Saints every game next year.
It was, yeah.
I don't mind playing. And like I said, listen, I think the Saints were a lot of what the Eagles were the year before. You saw them slow down a little bit towards the end of the year, and teams start to catch up to them. I think their offense was so good early on, their defense didn't have to spend as much time on the field, and they looked a lot better than they really were, which is not to say that their defense was bad. I just think they looked better than they really were. So, we'll see how things turn out this year.
And I'll definitely agree with you with that, because their defense had to step up so much at the end of the year because, like you said, their offense was on fire in the beginning of the year. Not to say they weren't on fire at the end of the year, but they weren't putting up 40 points like they were in the first 4 weeks. So their defense definitely had to step up and improve.
All right, Dallas has to play the divisional players that we always play. And then we have to play at home. We get the Packers, the Vikings, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Rams. Away, we get the Bears, the Lions, the Patriots, the Saints, the Jets.
Come to the home dome.
I tell you what, Dallas has a tough schedule.
Come to that dome.
That is a real tough schedule.
Well, and the Saints did get Malcolm Brown,
which was a huge signing.
Not a bad move for them this offseason.
Especially since they just lost Okafor to the Kansas City Chiefs, which was good for the Kansas City Chiefs because they let a couple older guys go, which was sad to see Barry go and Houston, but they improved their D-line.
Well, and, I know we were discussing free agents a little bit earlier, but Ndamukong Suh's going to be out there, right? Like, what do we do about that? Is anybody going to pick him up? What's that contract?
He's meeting with the Chargers. But, hey, Chris, you need to circle your calendar because week 3 you're coming to Dallas. You guys open up against the Falcons. Then you go to the Bills. You're on the road for the first 1, 2, 3, 4. The dates aren't announced yet, so this might not be legit. But it says the Falcons, at the Bills, at the Cowboys, at the Packers, at the Dolphins, at the Vikings, at the Giants. Then you're home against Dallas, the Giants, the Redskins, the Bears, the Lions, New England, the Jets, Seattle, and Washington.
That sounds like an easier schedule.
Now, that's probably not in order because it doesn't have any times or dates on it, but that's who you're playing this year.
Right.
But that's it's a tough schedule because, let's face it, Green Bay is tough to play there, no matter what kind of team they have. If you get them,
it really is.
If you get them in the end of the year, it's really tough for anybody. Chicago's another one. You get them at home, though, and it's tough to play in Philadelphia.
I think it'll be tougher if we're winning, right? Like, if we're doing well, if we're winning, it's a lot tougher to play in our city. But I'll tell you this. I'm looking forward to see what the offense looks like. I think what we'll get with our defense. We've been pretty much the same over the past 3 years. We'll be close to that 20-point-per-game average. We'll be teetering with that. But once again, if we have an offense that can stay on the field, and that's how this team's been built to play over the last few years, right, is a team that will get ahead and hold the lead. We've always been a bend but don't break team. We'll let you move the ball between the 20s, but when you get inside that red zone, we usually clamp down. So we'll see what that looks like this year. If we're able to score, I like our chances, guys. I really do. If we're able to score the ball at a higher rate than we were, at a more successful rate than we were last year, which I'm hoping Carson Wentz returning and being completely healthy, like I said, having a full offseason to work with his wideouts, hopefully we'll be able to repeat the success that we had in 2017. Doesn't have to be exactly like that, but we need to be close, at least offensively.
And Chris, before we wrap up here soon, I have to ask you the one question that probably a lot of people ask most Eagles fans. At some point towards the end of the season, the offseason, did you think about maybe Foles should be the starter next year? And were you a little sad, to see Foles go?
Yeah, I was definitely a little sad to see him go. But here's what I'll say about Foles as a starter. I think sometimes we forget that he struggled in the beginning of the year. That's number one. And the roles are a lot different, right? When you're stepping in as a backup quarterback and there's not quite as much pressure, it's easy. When you have to be the starter and you're under the microscope and that pressure is on you every week, it's a lot more difficult to execute. So was I upset to see him go? Yeah, a little bit, but I would have only wanted him if he could stay here and accept the backup role. I really do believe that Carson Wentz is the future of this team. A lot of us forget what he did in 2017, which is not to say that he'll repeat that same success. But if you believe, like I do, that he's a legitimate quarterback in this league, then you have to believe that when he's fully healthy, he'll be as good or better than he was in 2017. And add to that, he's a little bit younger, and add to that, he's a little bit cheaper this year only. It was a good deal because you couldn't afford to pay Nick Foles that much money as a backup. And the second thing is, I don't think you could expect Carson Wentz to be successful if Nick Foles was still on this roster.
I agree with that. I really do. My only concern with Wentz is I think he's a good quarterback, a real good quarterback, is his health. Going all the way back to college, he's been hurt almost every year. And that back injury he had last year is probably the same one that ended Tony Romo's career. You have to have concerns about that going forward because once you start with back injuries, man, it's tough to get over that hump because every time you get hit, you're going to feel it.
I definitely do. I definitely do think Carson Wentz is, the Eagles franchise quarterback. 2017 had a great year. I do think Foles, though, did prove himself to at least get another chance to start somewhere, which, I'm happy for him that he's starting with the Jags. But Carson Wentz, he's a good man. I think he's going to come back. I mean, nobody really comes back right away from an injury like that. It takes time. But I think that he'll bounce back, and they'll look good this year. I definitely think so.
All right, Chris, the madness is getting ready to start in college basketball. We haven't Ty and I haven't touched much of college basketball yet. What do you think as far as college basketball? First of all, what do you think about as far as paying college basketball players? Do you think if you start that opens up a whole can of worms where you're going to be paying almost every sport in college basketball or college sports altogether?
Yeah, I mean, it stinks because I played college basketball, right? Now I played at the Division III level, so it's not quite the same as being a Division I player. But it's a conundrum, right? Because you see these players, and we all know, if I go out and buy a Duke jersey right now, right, I'm buying a Zion jersey. I'm not just buying it because it's Duke. I'm really buying it because it's Zion. And these universities make a ton of money off the backs of these kids. As a matter of fact, a lot of these schools, their identity is their sports program, right? Like, nobody wants to go to Duke for their debating team, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's filling up a stadium to watch these guys debate. So what do you do, right? What do you do to keep them in college? You can say, well, we're going to do the two-and-done rule where guys got to come and play 2 years and then they'll be eligible for the NBA draft. But then the fear is, do you lose guys to going overseas and just jumping out of high school and going overseas and
but
playing
hey,
2 years and then coming back?
Did you see that rule is changing next year?
Oh, yeah, I definitely. But you're asking me, what do we do as far as paying the players? And so what I'm saying to you is I don't know what you do, honestly, because I would like to see a stipend system, right? But then if you do something like that, you have to make that across the board. You can't just say we're going to pay college basketball players. You have to say we're going to pay college players, right? And then what do? Do you base it on the amount of money that they bring into the sport? Or do you say we're going to put this money in a pot with all sports and we're going to divide it equally among all athletes? That's difficult. And then even furthermore, do you say, well, we pay Zion a little bit more because he's the draw and we play some of these other guys a little bit less because nobody's really coming to see them? It's difficult when you get into that.
Let me ask you this. Some of these kids that go to these big schools, those schools aren't cheap, and say Duke, for instance. Imagine if you did 4 years at Duke, that you're probably talking close to $100,000 for the total tuition. But these kids that get the free ride, do you think that should be enough? I mean, because you got kids that are there that aren't getting the free ride, that are paying. And, the superstars that are there, they're basically getting the free ride to go to school there.
They are getting a free ride, but one, how many of those kids actually stay for all 4 years?
Yeah.
Typically none of them. And the second thing is, so maybe this kid gets $80,000 in college education, or let's say it's Duke, so maybe it's closer to $120,000. Dude, off of 1 year of college basketball, the school's going to make well over $2 to $3 million, maybe more than that, right? Because we're talking about ticket sales now. I know the one game I saw where Duke, I think, was playing North Carolina, the average ticket was like $2,500. Are you kidding me? And we're talking about these kids getting a college education. They're not allowed to work. If
Yeah.
you're a Division I athlete, you can't work. And so your scholarship money is good, but what does that take care of? Your room, your board, your books, right, and a meal plan. Dude, we've all been – if you've been to college, you want a little bit of walking around money as well. And so if you're not getting it from the school, now you're looking at, well, maybe I'm going to take it from an agent. Maybe I'm going to get it from a source where I shouldn't get it from.
Boosters.
Maybe be like or maybe you even just accept free food, right? It doesn't even have to be where you're accepting money. You're accepting free food, and now you're ineligible. So there has to be something else put into place for these athletes. It's just not fair. And then, there's also this, and we're seeing this with Zion now. What if you get injured? Now a guy who really was planning on being able to go to the NBA is going, could potentially miss out on millions of dollars. There's got to be a caveat to it.
He's playing now.
Yeah, he's back tonight.
Yeah, he's back.
But let me ask you this, Chris. Chris, do you think as soon as he graduates, do you think Nike is going to come to him with an amazing amount of money?
You don't think Nike's approached him already?
I'm sure. I mean,
let's not act like these organizations wait until these kids actually graduate.
Yeah, I mean, with boosters and everything else, I know these kids have money, And let me ask you one more question, because there are rumors about, the NBA is supposed to open it up for 18-years to come back again and play. And you're also talking about something like a G League where they're going to pay kids to come right out of high school $100-some thousand a year to play. Do you think that that's going to end up hurting college basketball in the end?
I think it'll hurt college basketball, but you know what? I also think it'll hurt pro basketball. We're seeing just like we're seeing a watered-down NFL, I feel like we've been watching a watered-down NBA for the last few games. Now, some of these games are just terrible, and I think there's a lot to be said about free agency. I think that's kind of ruined basketball as well because, once again, when we were younger, we saw guys that would get with the franchise and wanted to build with that franchise and win with that franchise. I mean, they were enemies. You didn't want to go and play with Detroit because a guy that you played with in college or a guy that you played with on the AAU circuit was going there. You wanted to beat that guy. And it's just different now. So I think if we're going to play high school guys to come right out of high school and make hundreds of thousands of dollars, listen, for some kids that's good enough, right? And college sports is watered down then. Pro sports becomes watered down then. But I'll tell you one thing it does do, and we haven't discussed this yet, and I don't know if you guys have discussed this yet on the podcast, but with sports betting becoming legal now, the more leagues, the better, right? Because there's more things for you to bet on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
so
that's true.
I think it's a detriment. I think it's a detriment to the sport in general, especially college basketball. But I think across the spectrum, if we're looking at revenue and sports betting, it's probably better for business.
And they bet on everything anymore. I mean, over and under on how many catches someone's going to get, or over and under on just stupid things. And
the length of the national anthem, dude, like that.
Yeah,
that's for everything.
Well,
I saw a prop bet during the Super Bowl that was over under how many times they show Gisele Bundchen during the game. Like, are you serious? That's a bet.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at some scores right now. North Carolina handled Louisville. They won by 13, 83-70. West Virginia is actually taking it to Texas Tech. Number 7, Texas Tech, is losing by 1 with 19 seconds to go. Marquette blew out St. John's 84-49. This is the time of year where it starts getting nuts. It really does.
It's a great time of year, though, and I love if you love basketball in general, you love the tournament. It's we were talking earlier about Gonzaga, who was number 1 team in the country, beat St. Mary's last week. And then this week gets knocked off by St. Mary's. I mean, they beat St. Mary's last week. It was a blowout. This is a great time of year for college basketball.
Yeah. All right. We're going to wrap this up soon, Chris. But before we go, I want to ask you, who do you think is going to win the March Madness championship this year?
If you had asked me last week, I would have told you Gonzaga. I'm going to say Gonzaga or North Carolina. The reason why I like Gonzaga, during the tournament, I always like a team that has a little bit of veteran experience, right? They've had a little bit more time to play together. There's some continuity there. So I like the Zags. I think if I was picking a dark horse this year, I'd pick Michigan State.
Ooh.
I know they're a tournament favorite, but that would be my sleeper.
I tell you what, Gonzaga, I like them, but Virginia's tough. You have to keep an eye on them. They're a really good team. And I think my sleeper, you can never count out Kentucky. They've been hot lately. They started out slow, but they're hot lately. I mean, Michigan's my favorite team, but I don't see them going far this year. I just don't. The 3-point shooting's not there, and they live and die by the 3-point game. They're lucky to beat 26-5. I mean, they beat some good teams this year, but I don't think they're going to make it. But I would not sleep on Kentucky or Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia's tough. I like them too. Good call.
Yeah. All right, my friend. We're going to wrap this up. It's been a pleasure, man. We definitely got to do this again because, I could talk sports forever. But unfortunately, 4 a.m. comes early. But
yeah, bro, it was a pleasure being on. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We love doing this, and I've been reaching out to you because you've done this for a long time, and hopefully we can turn this thing in the right direction and get it going to get a lot of subscribes and everything. But I think having guest speakers on it makes talking so much easier than just Ty and I doing it, and we definitely have to do this again with you.
Anytime, bro.
All right, man. God bless. Have a great night.
It was an honor, Chris, to have you on the show today. This will be uploaded on YouTube with Everything Goes, with a Z at the end. You can check out our Facebook page with a Z at the end. Hit the like, subscribe, and we will see you guys next time on Everything Goes.